Sunday was turning out to be just another boring race at Martinsville when fireworks started with less than 10 laps to go, and we had ourselves one of the best finishes of the season with Kyle Busch punching the first ticket to Homestead in the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series playoffs. We'll tell you how it all unfolded as Prime Sports NASCAR, brought to you by Race Review Online on Prime Sports Network, starts now. All right, it is Tuesday, the happy Halloween, 31st of October, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, and we've got a lot to cover here in a short period of time, so let's get right to it. First, let me introduce RotoWire.com writer for NASCAR and F1, as well as two-time Racing Writer of the Year award winner by Fantasy Sports Writer Association, CJ Raduna of the program. And CJ, I guess thank goodness for those last 10 laps, or else it would have been like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah, those last couple of cautions certainly opened things up. You could see it kind of steaming throughout, or simmering, I guess, throughout. But man, it truly did boil over once we got to those late caution flags.
Yeah, it also kind of reminded me of the Brickyard, where, as usual, nothing went on up until the last several laps. As a welcome in auto racing partner, Eric Smith, and lead motorsports editor for RaceReviewOnline.com. So, Eric, look, I will say this though. I mean, really, if you think about it, it is ironic that it was like, all right, we've got Elliott and Hamlin and Keselowski and Keselowski and Elliott and Hamlin and Elliott and Keselowski, and then it's Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. It's like, how in the world did that race end up with those two again?
It's just goes to prove that the playoffs, these two just up their game, stay out of trouble when it matters.
And have Jimmy Johnson type luck.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like they've got the golden horseshoe, per se, now that they could have loose wheels or pit road speeding penalties or do things that would shoot most other people in the foot. And here they are again, even when they really didn't do anything wrong, and everybody else messes up, and there they are 1-2 again. So it just almost goes to show that it doesn't matter what anybody does. At the end of the day, it's these two are 1-2. It doesn't matter what happens during any other course of the race. Those two are going to be the top two, it seems like, more often than not.
Yeah, and now with Kyle in, you would think that Martin Truex will probably be next to punch his ticket the way this season has gone, because, CJ, when Kyle cut Joey Logano's tire, which really started everything, because without cutting his tire, maybe Keselowski goes on and wins, and it's not exciting at all. And when he did it, it was almost like, because kind of when you think back at it, when I saw it happen, to me it was like, well, Kyle's kind of just, all right, it's Joey Logano, let me get him out of the way, and if I could screw him, fine, because we know there's no love lost between the two. But I didn't look at it as, oh, I got to get Joey Logano out of the way because I got to win this race. It was almost like, okay, let me get around this guy. I hate him. If I can cut his tire, great. If I can ruin his day, excellent. And then he winds up winning the race because of it. So, but that's what started it all.
Yeah, it did. And what was most fascinating to me was you knew that Logano was encountering a problem. I mean, anyone watching could see it. And by the way, hey, your teammate's in the lead and it's kind of comfortable. So what are you doing hanging out on the track? Why don't you pit? You know you've got a problem. You are not in the hunt. Get out of the way, let the race happen, let your teammate win, work his way through to Miami. That was the most fascinating thing to me, more so than, the tempers on the track, just the fact that Logano didn't get called into the pits sooner. I think everybody in the world could see it, but for whatever reason, that crew chief and Logano just didn't.
Was there any fallout, or have you heard any fallout?
No, remarkably not. I have not heard anything. So I was anticipating that would have been probably the headline of the post-race. Why didn't Logano pit when his teammate was in the lead? But, everything that happened in those last couple laps, I think, completely overshadow it. But I guarantee you, back at Penske's headquarters, they're having some conversations behind closed doors.
And then Eric, we had the whole Chase Elliott thing, and look, I didn't put Chase Elliott in my picks this week because of what we saw again on Sunday. because I've had Chase Elliott finishing second, every time he's finished second in the past month or so, and I was getting kind of tired of it because it was like, there's just something about, and we talked about it last week. There's just something he's just not. I don't know if it's maturity or what it is, but didn't we see this a couple of years ago with Joey Logano, where he would be in these positions and then he'd get into these fights with the veteran drivers, and it almost was like his baptism, and then all of a sudden next season, like, Joey Logano was like on top of the world, and I kind of think we're all feeling like we're going to see that with Chase Elliott now. He's going through that stage right now. But I tell you what, I think it's good for him, and he might be upset about it, but this is the best thing for him.
I agree. I think that honestly was up until Hamlin kind of punted him there, that most people, I think Chase, he's a nice guy, great racer, but I have to think if Hamlin thought that Chase Elliott would have got out like a Kyle Busch or Logano and came out throwing punches, that he might have thought about that a little differently, but he knew the kind of guy Chase is, that he's not overly aggressive. And we saw it on the backstretch there. Chase had every right if he wanted to throw haymakers, but he didn't. But I think we saw a new aggression out of Chase at Martinsville, hence the move that he made on Keselowski there with 4 to go, the lap prior to him. And that the old Chase, I would say, probably would have held his line low, and Keselowski probably would have passed on the outside, which is the whole reason Keselowski restarted on the outside, because of the day prior, Matt Crafton in the truck race restarted on the inside because it's Martinsville. Why would you not want to start on the inside? He started on the inside. Why would you start anywhere else but on the inside? And Noah Gragson actually on the outside had a better run. For some reason, Martinsville, that second groove this past weekend, it kind of held in and you can make some passes. Keselowski and Joey Logano did that all day. That's why Keselowski chose the outside line. Well, Chase kind of forced them up high off that line, which caused Keselowski to back out a little bit. Chase's aggressive move took the lead. I don't think Chase did that. Probably prior to maybe Dover, when Kyle Busch passed him for the lead, everybody kept talking about how not really overly aggressive Chase was. He hasn't won yet because maybe he doesn't have that aggression. He needs that aggression. He needs that, I'm kind of ticked off. I'm not going to take this anymore. Martinsville, I think, was that turning point for him, and I agree. If he takes that aggression here moving forward, he could be a force to be reckoned with. This may be that turning point that you look at if he does have that typical Joey Logano season next year.
Yeah.
Point back to Martinsville, or you can really go back further to Dover about how dejected he was when he finished second and let that race slip away. I've heard multiple experts like Kyle Petty, Dale Jarrett, those guys really talk about Chase Elliott on restarts at the end of races, how he's not aggressive enough, how it's his fault why he's not winning, that he's up front in track position, but he slips back and fades. Well, Sunday showed on that second to last restart there, he wasn't giving up. He was going for it no matter what, and I kind of like that Chase Elliott. If he races like that, he's going to win, and he's going to win a lot.
Well, CJ, I mean, did it surprise you at all when Denny Hamlin wrecked Elliott? Because it didn't surprise me. I mean, maybe because it happened so fast, I expected maybe a little bit more driving. But then again, we had only a couple of laps to go. But I wasn't surprised. I mean, we've seen this many times. I mean, this is what it is. This is what we've been expecting Chase Elliott to do a lot of other times. So I guess I wasn't that surprised. Maybe I was more surprised with the reaction. Boy, did the fans really get behind Chase Elliott there and not like what Denny Hamlin did.
Yeah, I don't think I was surprised. I would have expected it out of Keselowski. I would have expected it out of Kyle Busch just as much as I expected it out of Hamlin. I think when you're in that situation, you've got the first race in the playoffs, the final round of the playoffs to get to Miami, and all you've got to do is get this young rookie out of your way. I think you're going to do everything you can to get him upset. I think some of the commentary afterward was more telling as to what the situation was in terms of where he was bumped in the corner in entry, and that Denny Hamlin didn't let him go. you can bump somebody into entry and they'll push wide.
Yeah.
But the fact that Hamlin never backed off, so all the way through turn in, he was hooked onto Elliott's bumper. That's what ultimately made him slide and lose control and hit the wall. I think that is where the line was crossed. So I think any of the other drivers probably would have gotten him loose, would have thrown it on the inside, bumped him out of the way. 8 wheels are better than 4, kind of saying goes. But the fact that Hamlin just kept driving him through the braking zone and through turn in, I think was what made it so, made the reaction what it was.
Is there anything that a driver is supposed to do when they're leading in that spot to make sure that they don't get wrecked?
Yeah, outbrake the person. You're always at a disadvantage on a track like Martinsville when you're going into that corner. You've got to get a really good run off of the prior corner to get that run down the back straight. And even still, the person following you has the advantage because they're going to see when you brake and they're just going to wait that extra bit longer. So it's totally 100% in that following car's hands.
All right, Eric, as far as the playoff picture is concerned, it looks like standings-wise, everybody finished pretty decently, even though Jimmy Johnson probably should feel lucky to finish even 12th. But Elliott was the one that was the biggest loser. So what's his chances right now? And does everybody else other than Elliott, are they okay? They still have more than enough time in the next 2 races?
Yeah, I think everybody's okay. Chase, 26 points out. He's really going to have to make up a lot of ground this weekend at Texas. He's really going to have to play the stage race game now. He's going to have to make up a lot of ground in stage points. 26, we saw Kyle Larson lost 29 in one race. He can make up 26. His only problem is he's going to have to leapfrog 4 drivers to do so. That's going to make it tougher to him. But Texas, he's finished 5th, 4th, and 9th in 3 starts there, and he's finished 2nd in 3 mile-and-a-half tracks in the playoffs so far this year. So if we see that overly aggressive chase, he could win and make up for it. But I think that's kind of where he's going to be at now, making up stage points and finishing seconds. I don't know how much that's going to do, just only because 26 points in this stage of the game is going to be hard to make up on the 4 drivers in front of him. But I think he can win. The other 4, Harvick, being 3 points up on Jimmy, Blaney 6 back, Hamlin's 8 back. If, say, Chase doesn't win a race and it's between those 4 for that final spot, it could be anybody's game at that point. You might as well put a blanket over him because, again, it's going to come down to stage points and strategy to stay up in the top 10 in the first 2 stages, because if you don't get any stage points, that's really going to hurt you. But I look at Denny Hamlin on that move, too, that he made. Say he doesn't make that move. Say he makes it a few laps later. Say he can't get by and finish a 2nd. Well, that's 5 more points he would have got because he finished 7th.
Yep.
Well, he's 8 points back. Give him 5 more points. Now he's 3 points back. And he's tied for Jimmy Johnson for the first place out, basically. So could those 5 points now come back and hurt him at Phoenix when the checkered flag falls? And what if he's 5 points out? That move that he made in Martinsville could end up actually costing himself too. So that's another thing I'm going to look at these next 2 weeks is stage points and that move that Hamlin made, because Texas coming up is not one of his better tracks. And in 2010, he actually swept both Texas races. But since that year, he hasn't had a top 5 finish there since. So if he can't finish in the top 5 on Sunday and he's giving up stage points, that could allow Chase Elliott to creep up and get by him. Jimmy Johnson, while he's got 7 wins at Texas, and he won there obviously back in the spring, he just doesn't have it on a mile-and-a-half track this year. The only way I think Jimmy Johnson wins there this weekend is really a fluke. If he strategizes his way to the front or the other guys take themselves out. Martinsville kind of showed me a lot that he 12th place finish. I don't think he's got it still.
Yeah.
We're 33 races in. You don't just turn it on now.
No.
That's who he is this year.
Yeah.
And I just don't trust him. So to me, that's where Chase can make up ground on Jimmy and Denny. Blaney, he ran well at Texas back in the spring. He finished 12th. He finished 12th there in this race last year. I think that's kind of about where he's going to be, kind of the 7th to 12th range. So really that then moving to Harvick, he's got, it looks like 6 straight top 10 finishes at Texas. He started on the pole there back in April. He's got 9 top 10 finishes and 10 intermediate tracks this year. So he's looking at a top 10 finish. So really, I would put it, this is probably Martin Truex Jr.'s race to lose. Kyle Busch will be right there with him, trying to keep somebody else out. Brad Keselowski talked about this isn't his strong point, 1.5 mile tracks this year. So that makes those last 2 spots really interesting, and this could be where Chase Elliott makes up his ground. It would be this weekend.
And the other tri-oval tracks with the higher banking that are similar to Texas, Atlanta and Charlotte, right, CJ?
That is correct.
Do we have how have those guys performed this year on those tracks? Did we have, or not just this year, but overall as far as the team? Any specific advantages for anyone else outside of Texas on those 2 tracks?
No, I mean, you got to look at the guys that are traditionally good on the 1.5 mile tracks, and those are, historically it's Jimmy Johnson, but like Eric said, he's not really got the swagger behind him as we would have expected at this point in the season. So it really would kind of come out of left field for him to be able to excel this weekend, just based against the competition. Not that he's going to be bad, but I think just based on the competition, it's going to be difficult for him to do that. Having said that, though, his average finish over the last 5 races at Texas is 3.6, whereas, as Eric said, Hamlin's more recently is actually 19th. So big problem for Hamlin there. He wouldn't be one that I would put in there as being one of the top choices, but I totally agree. I think Truex is the one that has really supplanted Johnson in terms of being the master of the 1.5 mile ovals at this point. I mean, he's dominated Charlotte a handful of times. I think he could come out with a similar setup at this track, and they're all slightly different. I hear you, but Truex and that team has just been so good on these types of tracks this year, and even the past 2 years, that I think it's probably his race to lose this weekend.
And the other thing we have to keep in mind, and this is Denny Hamlin. He might want to hope big time that Chase Elliott doesn't win in Texas if he doesn't win, because what Denny Hamlin does not want to see is Chase Elliott in like a I have nothing to lose scenario where I'm like way out of points, or I'm already in the Homestead and I am now going to make your life a living hell in Phoenix.
The Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano situation.
Yes. So and that could happen, right, Eric? That wouldn't be a big surprise. Maybe that's something Chase needs to do.
Yeah, don't be shocked if that's something he does. And also, don't count out those other 2 Hendrick cars that can make life really a living hell for Denny, too. I know Dale Jr. and Casey Kane would love to help their teammate out. I'm not saying those guys would be dirty drivers, because Casey and Denny are friends off the track. But, and Casey is obviously leaving at the end of the year and Dale's retiring, but they're still Hendrick guys. They're still Chevy guys. Those guys are going to have Chase's back, where if I want to say they purposely would wreck Denny, but they can make it tougher to pass. They can make it tougher to get by. They can hold him up. They can affect his finishing position a little bit there. And obviously Texas is not a spot that's strong suit. Phoenix kind of is, but at Phoenix races like a short track. So somebody could turn him, make him spin, maybe not personally try to wreck him, but they could turn him off of the turn 2 going down the dog leg on the backstretch down there where there's a lot of room to spin off, where it wouldn't look so deliberate, but they could also really just make his life rough and making it the Homestead. And honestly, I worry about Denny's chances because of that, because there's a lot of drivers. There's kind of the code in the garage, how you race other people. And Denny, just kind of what he did with the chase on that last lap, or the 3 laps to go there at Martinsville, really rubbed a lot of people wrong. If he would have kind of moved them up, kind of like CJ said, just there's kind of etiquette where you can just kind of move somebody, just tap them out of the way. Kind of what Chase did to Keselowski. Slow them up where you're not going to ruin somebody's day or their playoff hopes. They could finish 4th, 5th, 6th, but they're not 27th like Chase did. But all these other guys noticed how Denny raced, and a lot of them said game on, that they're going to race him differently now. Just that's how he's going to race them, and that's how they're going to race Denny. So Yeah, I do think he should be worried a little bit.
What CJ? What did Hamlin not do? Was his car was just not handling well enough on the restart for him to stay low, or was that a mistake, or did he do something wrong by not being able to stay low on the restart? Because he was in great shape having his teammate there who wasn't going to wreck him. So all he had to do is maintain some sort of balance on his car for those 2 laps, and he would have won the race.
Yeah, I think it was clearly just a little bit of a mistake. I think Kyle probably didn't even expect, based on his post-race interviews, that he was going to be able to challenge Hamlin going into that turn. And I don't think he necessarily even thought of, even getting close enough to his bumper to being able to tap him to move him out of the way. So I think there was some sort of mistake, and whether it was off the corner prior or going into the corner, it looked like it was probably handling. Maybe his tires had gone away just that little much, and he was pushing it a little bit too exuberant, and Busch saw the opportunity to get onto the inside. And, Kyle Busch give him an opportunity. There's no way he's not going to take it, and that's exactly what he did. Didn't wreck him or anything like that, just kind of moved him out of the way, and that's more than appropriate. I think going back just a slight half step in the conversation, I thought it was very telling, Martin Truex afterward in his post-race interview saying that he purposely took the day very quietly and just kind of snuck through for a top finish, and he said 100% he didn't want to create any enemies on Martinsville. I think he's learned the lesson that probably Logano and others have learned before him, that when you get this far in the chase, you've got, a bunch of other guys out there that are gunning for you, that a lot of them with nothing else to lose. So being able to have guys on your side is a better thing than not.
We talked last week, Eric, and of course CJ and I have talked countless times about what NASCAR can do to make it more exciting for the fans, especially with the scheduling and the playoffs. And this should just be another lesson. And that is the fact that, seriously, what are we doing with no Bristol in the playoffs? Wouldn't it be better in the last few races to have as many short tracks as possible so we have this type of drama?
Oh, I agree. David Reagan, I believe it was, last night tweeted out in a very interesting, telling stat that he said, look at our slowest tracks on the schedule, Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond. They actually produce the better races. We don't need to go fast to produce great shows. Actually, we can be better by slowing down. So if you put those type of tracks later in the playoffs, yeah, I think you're in for gold. You're in for high TV ratings. I saw NBC put out a stat today that their highest rating period during the race on Sunday was from 6:45 on.
Oh, that's a shock.
Well,
I wonder why.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. People tune in to watch the end of a short track race, and look what happened.
And they can turn off their football.
Exactly. That it's coming to the late kind of halftime of the late games, 4:00 games. So around that time it's halftime. Let's flip over to the race. Well, look what happens, and now you get that drama. Now everybody's talking about is Denny Hamlin versus Chase Elliott. I know NASCAR America and the Fox Sports Race Hub. That's all I talked about last night was the drama, and that's what NASCAR wants. I saw people asking, well, are they going to penalize Denny Hamlin? Why would they?
Yeah.
This is what they want. This is what they've created. And Denny Hamlin, and at least give him a little good talk here. He's not like that type of driver that would purposely punt somebody like that and ruin their day. He did it because of the system that they're racing in.
Sure.
That's what NASCAR wanted, right? They want drama. They want you win in advance. That's their moniker now.
Yeah.
So Denny knew he didn't have a car to win. He wasn't up front at all day. He was probably a 5th to 10th place car. Well, Chase Elliott had a car to win. Well, Denny knew he's got one car in front. It wasn't just Chase Elliott that was in front of him. He saw the Cup Championship trophy sitting in front of him. He knew with Texas coming up next week, if he was going to go to Homestead, per what NASCAR created, you win, you're in. Well, he took him out. He knew that was his one shot, and that's what he did. And he will live with the consequences later. So that's why we need short tracks, because you're not going to do that at Texas.
No.
These guys all have at least enough respect at those speeds. Unless you're Kyle Busch or on Hornaday in a truck race, 5-6 years ago when they did that to each other. But you're not going to do that at Texas. Phoenix, you can kind of have that drama. It's another track that races like a short track. But
Ryan Newman
honestly,
proved that a couple of years ago.
Yep, him and Larson. So honestly, I would like to see the this third round of the playoffs be Bristol, Martinsville, Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be awesome.
Yes, that's a lot better than Talladega, where it's more luck. The short track racing ain't luck. That's who's got the balls to actually make those moves at the end of the race in order to get you into that final spot at Homestead. So hopefully we'll see some of those changes take place. All right, finally, CJ, right now at this point, it looks like it'll be Truex and Kyle Busch for sure. Keselowski's in a really good spot. So if the three of them move on, who else do you think is going to join them at Homestead?
That's an excellent question. I think Keselowski made the smart move a couple races ago to really start going for those playoff points, and it's really serving him well at this point. Eric said you throw a blanket over the bunch of them. That's probably true. Jimmy Johnson, despite the fact that he's not where he should be, he ends up making mistakes, both he and his team. His luck so persistent throughout the years, even now coming through for top tens when he's had just absolute crap days and sneaking through by the skin of his teeth. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one that snuck through in the fourth.
All right, and same question, Eric, as well as, is there any way, because we were really hoping big time for Chase Elliott to win the championship without winning a race, so because that could have thrown everything, this whole system into the garbage. So is there still any chance for Chase Elliott to get in now without winning, or is that over?
I'll never say never because of what happened with Kyle Larson at Kansas with the 29 points. It's just going to be tough. I don't know if he can pass. Obviously, I think he can get by Denny this week. I know he's 18 points behind him coming in. I think he can leapfrog him just because of Denny's past failures at Texas. Blaney and Johnson are going to be tough for him to get by, I think, without winning, because I agree with CJ. Johnson knows that he's not – I don't think he's going to these last two races thinking he's going to win. But I think they're just smart enough to kind of what they did the last round. Let's let everybody else screw up. Let's run our race. And if the chips fall our way, the chips fall our way. And it's hard to bet against that guy with those past championships. And it just seems like that's the way they're racing. And he's going to let everybody else screw up. But if Keselowski makes it on points, which I think he will at this point, because he did a good enough job at Martinsville to accumulate enough points, winning both stages, I think he gets it on points. He's too far ahead of Chase right now because he's 29 points up on the bubble, and Elliott's in there 26 points back. The odds of him making up that many points on Keselowski is going to be tough. And how we talk about Johnson as far as his championships, it's hard to go against Kevin Harvick at Phoenix. Yeah, he hasn't led a lap the last two races there, but he's led 1,167 laps in the 8 races prior with 6 wins there. So, and he's a closer. He's tough to beat in those situations where it's kind of a win or go home. I think Harvick's going to win Phoenix, and Keselowski's going to get that last place as far as the playoff points go.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk more about it next week and all the way through to Homestead. And we'll hopefully also get an opportunity to hook up with Kenny Bruce here on the show before we end it all in Homestead. So, Eric, thanks a lot. And CJ as well. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again next week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. So thanks again for checking us out here on Prime Sports NASCAR. And it's brought to you by RaceReviewOnline.com on the Prime Sports Radio Network. Don't forget, you can check out our on-demand shows following every live broadcast on our YouTube or iTunes pages under Prime Sports Network. And you can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. For CJ Radoon, for Eric Smith, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Prime Sports NASCAR.